So as the city disappears before us and is replaced by endless acres of meaningless, bland, mass-produced architecture, it doesn't have to be this way. There have always been alternative solutions, but mostly ignored by short-sighted city administrations who place their faith, their career and their city plans in the hands of corporate developers and profiteers, and usually without the citizens' permission to do so. So much of the city decay was because of industrialisation, they say, or blame. But most of it was really through a myopic vision that lacked the slightest imagination in development after deindustrialisation. A vision that could only see demolition and the growth of the new, with very little understanding of what that actually meant. So it was heartbreaking to watch the city, good and bad, being destroyed in the early 70s. It wasn't that some things needed knocked down, it was the indiscriminate nature of the mindless destruction of our city's heritage, industrial and otherwise. But then it wasn't just about the destruction of the architecture, but the destruction of the fabric of communities, the destruction of a visual history, of the markers that showed where people belonged. It was a desecration of rich communities that took generations to grow and develop. Communities that were dispersed and scattered to the four winds, then to reinvent themselves from where they were put. Stephen Sizzlecombe describes, in which an indoor toilet, hot water taps and central heating were exchanged for alienation. Yet at the same time in the UK, there were architects such as Neve Brown, who was an American-born British architect and artist. He specialised in modernist housing. Brown is the only architect to have all of his UK work listed, including the famous Alexandra Road estate located in Camden Town in London. So there were the models, the philosophy and the architects around at the time that could transform even the brutalism of concrete into places that many enjoyed and still enjoy living in today. Places that need to be noted, present developers are keen to see razed to the ground because they far exceed the building standards of what the same developers would replace them with. Back then here in Scotland there was a homegrown environmental architecture of Ian L. McHarg from Clydebank, of Design and Nature fame, 1969. McHarg was a Scottish landscape architect and writer on regional planning using natural systems, which sounds familiar today, but we're talking about the 60s and even earlier. McHarg was one of the most influential people in the environmental movement in the world, who brought these concerns into broad public awareness, along with ecological planning methods, into the mainstream of landscape architecture, city planning and public policy, whose skills our establishment at the time had no need for, when he and the skills of people like Neve Brown were most needed. So in leaving Scotland, McHarg went on to found the famous Landscape Architecture and Regional Planning Department at the University of Pennsylvania, and was perhaps best known for introducing environmental concerns in landscape architecture. So in a small country such as ours, with all the elements on our doorstep and the intelligent thinking of people like McHarg and others who were ignored, it's easy to see today the possibilities of where we could have been in this country in environmental sustainable living. It's all in our history of the great things that could have been and the great things that will never be if we do not listen to and support the McHargs of today, who can probably be found in our communities if we take the care to look.